Alright guys, welcome to this month's Culinary Hour. We're going to do Russia today. This we're going to prepare is a beef stroganoff. If you look at your first page on your fact sheet here, go over a couple items here. A traditional meal consists of 3 dishes in Russia. The first is a meat soup, wath, that means with, vegetables, I typed it really fast, and grains, i.e. borscht, soloknaya, and sishi. The borscht, obviously people know it's a beet soup. Second, fish or meat with a garnish, rice, buckwheat, potatoes, pasta, and stewed cabbage. The third is a beverage such as a juice. You also have traditional different beverages in Russia that I'm not going to go into at this point. In traditional meal patterns, every meal took place at a certain time of day. The most strictly observed were lunch and dinner. A lot of spell checks here, guys, so bear with me. The entire family gathered around the table where everyone had his or her designated place. The head of the table was the master of the house. He was the first to sit, followed by the remaining family members. I actually have a couple friends who were Russian actually as well too. They sit there, and the master, usually the father and the wife, would sit to his side, and the children in lineage would sit either side of them onto the table. So that's how it goes. It's pretty much formal for dinner. So I had a couple Russian dinners. I'll touch on it later on, but it's very quiet. You can't have any noise for the most part. The partying happens after the meal period. Very respectful during meal period. You're happy to be there. They're very open to have you, very open to guests. But the meal period is very quiet. It's almost like being in church for the most part. Yes?
What part does wine or other beverages take?
Pretty much all parts. It depends on the family, the culture, but usually that is reserved until the entree is served. You have the, yeah, or like post entree.
I see.
Yeah. Yep. Baked, boiled, roasted, fried food, and main courses, meat and fish, were presented in pieces in a big platter, taken by hands before the forks were introduced. Eating with the hands, obviously. Plates were replaced by big pieces of bread. Guests were put thick food, pieces of meat, fish, etc. on them, and when the meal was over, the bread plates were eaten too. So the bread was actually the plate. You'd put your stews in the top of your bread, you boil out the bread, you serve it, eat what's inside of it, and use the bread as a final part of your meal. Rules of conduct during meals were quite strict. It was taboo to knock or scrape a spoon on the dishes, throw the remains on the floor, talk loudly, and laugh. So my family would not be considered appropriate for Russian. Russians have always been known for their exceptional hospitality. Even in ancient times, the table was covered with a white tablecloth and bread, and salt were put on the top. Meaning the hosts were always happy to welcome guests. Whether or not they expected you or not, the house is always dressed like that. So maybe you weren't expected to be in that household, but if they saw you, come on in, the table's already set for you. That's how kind of open they are to guests. Typical foods include pancakes with caviar. Traditional caviar, in case you know, like, we have caviar, is labeled caviar, but actually traditional caviar is sturgeon roe from the Caspian Sea. Anything else that's labeled caviar is not caviar. So if you want true caviar, whether it's beluga, sector sevruga, those 3 of the major types, it actually has to come from the Caspian Sea, and that's the actual term of it. Because sometimes it's bastardized now with the term caviar, but actual caviar has to come from sturgeon roe from the Caspian Sea. Salad of tomatoes, cucumbers, sour cream, cabbage, potatoes, breads, beets, pierogi, mushrooms, and pickles. Who knows what pierogi is? It's a big one. Yes? What's pierogi?
It's a little pastry filled with meat or vegetables.
Right. It seems like every culture has their own version of pasta. Russian's version is pierogi, like ravioli for Italians, things like that. Wontons for Asian culture. So it's like a kind of starchy breading on the outside with the meat filling. Or you typically use potatoes, things like that. Beef stroganoff history. This is the dish we're going to make today. This particular dish dates back to the 19th century, so it's more of a modern Russian dish, but it's very popular in America. Count Pavel Stroganov was a celebrity and a dignitary in the court of Alexander III. He was a renowned gourmet. It was doubtful that he originated the base recipe because similar preparations have been found in 1871 cookbooks, which predates his gourmand status. The original recipe had cuts of beef, of mushrooms, and sour cream, like today, but the present dish is braised because legend has it that Count Stroganov lost all his teeth, and the chef prepared this version to overcome Stroganov's eating handicap. So basically the beef was more of a bigger cut because they say he lost his teeth. He wanted the chef to make it so he could eat it. So he ended up being a braised, it ended up being a stew. Or it could have been a saute or something like that. It's not really, it's kind of like all over the place. But the reason why he braised it because it's very tender meat. Americanized versions contain the addition of Worcestershire and sweet rather than sour cream. This version does not in keeping with the more traditional aspects. So I'm using sour cream, but not the addition of Worcestershire. So if you go to the recipe page, first thing we got to do, we have to infuse the stock. First thing I have here is beef stock, just straight beef stock. You can actually buy collagen or something in the store like that. This is actually a stock that is made from beef bones. It's 8 pounds of bones. I'm sorry, 8 pounds of bones for 6 quarts of water reduced down with the mirror pot. So reduce that, but you actually get a good version of a commercial stock in Stop and Shop collagen. What you want to do is bring this up to a simmer. I want to pass this around here. This is like a fresh thyme. I want to take a smell of that and pass it around. Much more prevalent than a dry thyme you get in a store. Smell it? Very strong. So this stock I'm going to infuse it with about 6 sprigs of thyme. I have 1 bay leaf in here. And a carrot. The carrot is going to add some sweetness to this. I want to cook this down kind of like a medium dice, so it'll cook really quick and infuse the stock. Now what this is going to do, obviously, because beef stock is strictly flavored with the beef, I'm adding the herbs to it. The bay leaf and the thyme has a nice earthiness to it. The carrot has a sweetness to it. So basically, you guys, when you make a tea, same kind of principle. When you add a flavor to a sauce, you can add an infusion, which is like a liquor or something like that. Reduce it, which we're going to do too, but also steeping method. The steeping method will render the flavor of what you add in there, your herbs, your vegetables. What happens is if you don't want that particular, the chunkiness in your sauce, which traditionally you don't have, but you want the flavor, then you steep it. So you will steep this when it gets flavored enough, I will strain that, and now that's a reduction and stew it. So while that's going, I'm going to concentrate on sauteing the beef. Talked about this a couple times before. If I put this beef right in the stock, it wouldn't have too much flavor. What you want to do is caramelize the outside proteins of this meat. This is basically chuck that's cut into cubes. I'm going to season with a little salt and pepper. What I'm looking for is to brown the outside of that meat. What that does, I touched on it a couple times before. People say to brown your meat and your roast. It really doesn't preserve moisture, like a lot of people think. Only reason to brown the meat for color, flavor, and texture only. You want to augment those meat proteins into different compounds and expose to heat. And when you first heard that sizzle when I added, that's one of the problems with electrical stoves I talked about once before. I love flame or gas stoves because this is thermostatically controlled. As soon as I added that meat, the temperature just dove down in that pan. That was smoking hot when I did that. Now if it was a flame, it'd be more of a consistent flame because you can see the element gets darker and red as it goes up. If you have a nice hot flame going on, typically that's what I have. Like when I got to my house, first thing I did was get rid of my electrical stove. I wanted gas. So the only thing that's run gas in my house is my stove. For that purpose alone. Put the pan back on, burn, get some more heat. We'll go with the onion. This particular version will have like a diced on this. I'll show you. Just move the outer layers of the onion. What you want to do is slice right through the core end. And you keep that intact. If I'm doing a dice, I go from the core end down to here. So right there. What happens is you don't have to worry about so much separating because onions come in layers. Actually, with the heat, they're going to separate anyway, so you get a nice dice on it. Salt and pepper as you go. I like kosher salt. Kosher salt, you can see the grains are a little heavier than regular salt. So I kind of feel what I'm adding. We'll get used to it. So what I'm looking for here is the onions to be translucent. I don't want to render any caramelization really. I want to kind of get the rawness off the stage of the vegetables, so expose it to high heat. And if you can see on the bottom of the pan, you have what they call a fond. A couple times before you can see like the brown meat and the onions that are sticking to the bottom of that pan. You don't want to lose that because that's a great flavoring agent for your sauce. So what you want to do is they call deglazing. What that does is it lifts all that brown matter at the bottom of your pan, becomes part of your sauce at that point in time. You don't want to think those onions is interesting in your sauce because you have great flavor at the bottom of that pan with a little caramelized sugar from your onions and the protein from your meat. So what you do is you glaze, so we use cognac for this. Okay, at this point in time, we're going to add the beef to this pan. Deglazed onions. And the stock. Smell that? Yeah.
Smelling good.
It's getting there, right? We've got constantly building up layers of flavors as you go along. Now, at this point in time, what I have in the pan is the brown meat, the onions, the cognac, and the beef stock, which is infused with the carrot, the thyme, and the bay leaf. So, from this point forward, what you would do is cover this up, 325-degree oven for about an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, until the meat is tender. Now, while that is proceeding, I'll do something. I add this to the recipe because a lot of times I have mushrooms. I don't like them because they're very slimy. I don't like that. Sometimes I even roast them. I like to saute them very quickly because they have a lot of moisture in them. And what happens is when they add that moisture, that water gets into your sauce and it weakens the flavor of your sauce. So I do them separately and add them at the end. So I get another saute pan going like this, nice and hot. And mushrooms. We have a combination here is, not so much rush, I have a combination of crimini, which are basically baby portobello mushrooms, shiitake, and some cultivated white mushrooms. addition of some butter. Now the reason for the oil addition with the butter is one thing. The butter, I did clarified butter for another thing before you remove the meat proteins. For this, I like to have the browning taste of the butter, but you cannot cook butter at high temperature. So the reason why I add the oil first, bring the temperature down a little bit, then add the butter because the butter will burn if it was straight butter. So I have a combination of a monounsaturated fat, which is that vegetable oil there, with the butter. So I get a butter flavor, but I can saute at a higher temperature. That's why it's a combination of the oil and the butter. So I can still get that flavor without risking burning the butter. A little salt, pepper. At this stage of the game, we can concentrate on the garlic. Garlic is one of those things where you add it too early, it'll burn. If it burns, your dish is done. So you want to have it like sauteed, get rid of the rawness of it, but you don't want to add it too early on in the high heat because it'll make your whole dish bitter. Like a fine mince on it. And I'm at that stage again where the mushrooms have a little caramelization on the bottom of the pan. I want that flavor, so I'll go right to cognac again. Why not? Because it's good. Now the garlic. So you can see here, all the vapors that are coming off is strictly water from the mushrooms. If I added them straight into my the braising dish, very weak in flavor. That's the reason why I do this separately and fold in at the end, because you're concentrating the mushroom flavor, eliminating the moisture, retains the texture, the thickness of your sauce. So that's a fold in at the end of the steak. Okay, now at this point, if this stew was pulled out, I like to cook it in the oven, 325 for about an hour and a half, like I said, 2 hours. This is done. These are nice and caramelized at this point. So I take this off and fold it in. Now if you look at your recipe, it'll say to finish with some sour cream, Dijon mustard, and some fresh parsley. But because the fact is, it's obviously been cooked, I'll make this out in the kitchen and cook it later on. I'm not going to finish this. So I'll take the finished product, this ends up being about, I took 2 pounds out for the demo, so this is about 18 pounds of beef with the mushrooms. So the final product ends up looking quite like this after it's braised for a while. But the only addition I have to now is sour cream. I don't want to add the sour cream, obviously, while it's boiling, because sour cream being a milk product, has milk proteins in it, and liquid, it will break and you get flecks of like, I've seen it before, if you burn a butter or something like that, it separates the oil and the fat, so you don't want to do that. So I'm going to save that till the end, when it's not boiling. Just fold it at the end. Dijon mustard. Use country style mustard too. I like Dijon. And what that fat does It's going to counteract a lot of that pepper flavor. The mustard has a nice vinegar essence to it too. So it's going to have like a sourness to it, almost like a later version of a sauerbraten. In America, they serve this over buttered egg noodles, but traditionally, potatoes are very big in Russia. So I just roasted off some thyme roasted herb potatoes, and I'll serve that on top of that. Finished ingredient is fresh parsley. As you can see, I have no worry about the sour cream breaking or anything like that because it's not coming to a boil now. This is plenty hot for service. These are just nothing more than red bush potatoes. I tossed with the oil, salt and pepper, some thyme, and roasted in the oven.
Now, the mushrooms are already in there.
They are, yep. Now working on the finished plate here. What you do traditionally is garnish it with the final dollop of sour cream. And a little flourish of fresh parsley. There you go, that's a finished dish. Any questions? Any questions?
Where do you find sour cream like that?
Bush's Dairy. Yeah, we go with that. It's good sour cream. It's nice and thick. Yeah.
It was big.
Yeah, it's big, right? We usually go about like 4 tubs of these a week at about this time. So. Yeah. Anything else? Yes.
What is the difference between Dijon and country style mustard?
The whole grain seed of the mustard seed is left on for country style. So what happens in Dijon, when they process it into a fine grain, it's either ground very fine or it's ground loose and they actually shake the outside seed coat of the mustard seed off. Whereas in country style mustard, they will grind it. It's kind of like a coarse ground versus fine ground pepper. Okay? It depends on the grinding of it. So sometimes they'll leave the seed coat on, but for the most part, they'll grind it to a certain level and they'll leave that seed coat on there for texture. So sometimes you get a crunch in the country style mustard because the seed coat is still on there. It's not ground fine or it's left on, you know? Yep.
Thank you.
Sure. Yes?
If you wanted to serve wine with this dish, what would you recommend?
Good question. I would go, okay, beef red, I'm talking, get some butter with the mushrooms, kind of earthy. A good medium to like a heavier bodied red. Syrah would be too hard, so I'd say maybe a Cabernet Sauvignon, like a Merlot, something like that. Yeah. I think Cabernet would work with this. Yep. Yes?
Besides chuck, what other kind of meats could you use in this?
Round, usually tougher kinds of meat because it's braised. Anything that's going to lend itself, like any muscle that's used mostly on the cow, the round, the chuck, things like that, that you cut in small bite-sized pieces and it can take a two-hour cooking method, you know? Things aren't like, you're not going to use like a ribeye or something like that. It'll break down because it's tender as it is. You really overuse muscles that you cut down. It could be shank, things like that too. Yes?
How would you change that for a diabetic diet?
Diabetic. Let me see. Tell you the truth, I'm trying to think. usually potatoes is the only thing I'd consider because there's no added sweetness to this diet whatsoever. You're dealing with strictly meat protein, vegetable, and beef stock. So as far as the diabetic diet is concerned, I wouldn't change much because the starch, you only have to worry about is the garniture of the starch of potatoes maybe, the amount of that. The beef alone, there's no issue with it whatsoever. I wouldn't change it. No. Yes?
Would there ever be dessert served with a dinner like this?
Sure. I know they do like almond cookies, things like that, but I'm not sure typically what Russian desserts would be. But they would. They do have a dessert course after the entree course, but I'm not sure exactly what the desserts would be. I could look into it.
Probably depending on the season as well.
Could be, yeah. They're very seasonal, agrarian culture, so like they'll raise their own stock, their own produce
Yeah.
and animals and things like that. So they'll go abide by the seasons. They do pickling too as well. So they'll pick things at the time of the season and then preserve them for the winter months as well. So there's a cold culture too as you get farther down, and but they do pick things according to season and pickle them to preserve them.
Do you need to use alcohol to glaze the pan?
No,
Ah,
you use water. You can use stock. I use alcohol because traditional. I like the flavor of the cognac. It's very earthy. You can add more beef stock.
okay.
You need water, whatever kind of juice if you want. Apple juice, if that's your preference. But like alcohol, the alcohol burns off and you get the earthiness of the flavor of the cognac. That's all.
Okay.
So it's not a preference. You can deglaze with any cold liquid. It's a differential in temperatures too. So what happens is you have a hot liquid and the cold interfaces with it, it lifts it off the pan. And so you can use any kind of liquid that would go with the dish really.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, Kibo.
All right, what's your opinion on cleaning mushrooms with just water versus a milk brush?
Okay. What happens is, a lot of times the mushrooms are cultivated, they are done in manure, but it's a pasteurized manure. So if you do ingest it, it really shouldn't be too bad for you, but you're still eating crap or whatever it is, it might be pasteurized. But what I do is what I traditionally do is like a very quick dip, it's called a blanc. What I do is, I take the mushrooms, and what happens is I get a pot of water, ice cold water, a touch of flour, and lemon juice. What happens is, the lemon juice will seize the color of the mushrooms, but the flour is that much grit to get rid of the manure and things that are sticking to mushrooms. So I dump the mushrooms in quick, swirl them and lift them out. I do a couple batches, but you don't want to leave the mushrooms there for an extended period of time because it will absorb that. It will add more to your saute, it'll add more to your roasting if you're roasting them. So what you want to do is you do it very quickly. Agitation is going to get rid of them very quickly, but the flour, it's called a blanc, it's a flour, lemon juice, and water combination. So you dip them in there, swirl it around very quick, and take it out really quick too as well. So you don't want to have to you don't want to leave them in there, it will take the water in. But that abrasion of the flour, fine grain, is just enough to get that, and plus your hand mixing it, you do it really quickly. You don't want to let them sit in the water. Want to taste? All right, guys. Well, that's a demo, so I'll start serving you. And then next time we'll probably do, I haven't done anything in the Asian, so I'll probably do like a Thai next time.